Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom. Today, I have brought you Tamra Andress. She is a 6-time best-selling author, a top 1% global podcaster, an international speaker, a marketplace minister, an experienced creator with retreats and events. Basically, she's a powerhouse, and I love our conversation around faith in business, some of the mistakes and lessons that she's learned over the course of the years. And yeah, she's amazing. So I'm excited for you to listen in. Hey, Tamra, welcome to the show.
So pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I am Tamra Andress, and I am a podcaster, a speaker, and author. I've written 6 bestsellers, and I have a publishing house, and I'm also in the process of developing a nonprofit for faith-driven entrepreneurs to get ordained and operate as joyful entrepreneurs. I'm a mama of 2 and a wifey to 1 that I love. His name is Gary Hot Hubby, and everyone knows him as such. I speak about him on stage, and so he is more of the hallway minister than he is ever going to be on a microphone. And I love that so much about the synchronicity of how we get to show up together.
Amazing. So how'd you get into all that?
Oh my gosh. I was an entrepreneur, I think since I was out the womb. My mom was an entrepreneur. My grandma was an entrepreneur. My dad was in the military. So that's a totally different side to who I am. Probably my discipline and obedience and regimen and early morning wake ups come from him. But the creative and the risk taker and the one who wanted to be accessible for her kids as often as possible, that was what my mom really demonstrated for me. So after going to business school, instead of ever writing a resume and getting what a quote unquote corporate normal American dream job, I went right after entrepreneurship in so many different ways. I started 9 different companies in my 20s, 2 of which actually took off, 1 of which really blew up. And it also blew up my life in a bad way. And so at 29 with 2 kids under the age of 2 and my husband that I just alluded to, who I'm so grateful we're married, in that season, I thought I was going to lose it all. And I had to make a pretty life-altering shift to am I an entrepreneur? And that's all that's going to be on my tombstone, which, by the way, even Steve Jobs doesn't have that on his tombstone. Or am I going to be a really awesome wife and child of God? And child of God probably goes first, and mom. And so I did what I call a forced quit, because part of it felt forced, like I didn't really have a choice, like the universe was conspiring against me and I was going to be in a state of depression, which I already was secretly. I was already processing suicidal ideation, and anxiety was running really, really high. Or I could take a rest and really operate out of a place of identity rather than what the world was calling me to be. Who am I actually supposed to be? So I'm grateful for my quarter life crisis and hopeful I don't have a midlife crisis since I already did it.
Yeah. So you had that quarter life crisis. Then what happened? How'd you get to where you are now?
Yeah. So 3 years in the making, I was a stay-at-home mom. I was working at their school. I was also in some schooling. I was doing a year-long worship school. I was doing my ordination and minister's licensing because I just felt like the only place that I could find my identity was in the identity of my creator. And also feeling in the midst of that, still so driven to entrepreneurship. And I love it so much. And I felt like, gosh, was that the bane of my existence, or is that who I am? And there just is a better way to do it. And I was going to coffee dates with friends, and one of them said, you should do this. And I was like, I should do what? She's like, you should get paid to help people develop their business. And I'm like, do people get paid for that? And she's like, yeah, I think there's this whole coaching arena. Now, this is about 6-7 years ago. I had no idea that business coaches, even after the decade that I had been in business, I didn't know they existed. And so I went on this rabbit hole experience that then I realized there's a whole industry around coaching that I just literally never knew about. And I thought, I could do this. I love doing this. And when I got to the root of all of the businesses I started in the past, and I figured out what is it that I really liked about it. I love the build stage. I love the launch stage, and I love people. And so if I could just evoke energy and activate people and they get to do what they're meant to do in all of their spare time, I knew that there was no better job. So I started my company at that point by inviting 30 women who were mostly all strangers into my husband's office room. That was way too small for them to all be there. I didn't think they'd show up, but a majority of them did. And I said, hey, I see entrepreneurial spirit inside of you. And while many of you would not call yourself entrepreneurs yet, I think that there's something more to what this life looks like, and I want to help walk it out with you. So fast forward 6 years, some of those people have stopped their business or have stopped their companies and their jobs, their normal things, and they no longer have 9-to-5s, and they're entrepreneurs and making full salaries and traveling the world with me, or I'm traveling the world with them based on how they've curated their life. And so it's been really fun.
Amazing. Okay. So when did you launch the podcast?
My podcast launched in simultaneous energy and timing as that 30 women coming to the well, it wasn't a closet. It felt like a closet. It was that small. So that was in January of 2019 that I started.
Okay.
And I've been doing podcasting. I now have 3 podcasts, but I had the one particular Fit and Faith podcast we're still going, we're in our 6th year now, over 450 interviews, and I drop twice a week. And then I've got 2 other shows. One launched January of last year, that drops weekly, and another one that started this year in January, and that drops weekly too. So I'm dropping 4 shows a week across 3 different show platforms, and it's really fun.
How do you create that much content?
How do I use that much content that I create is more the problem that I have, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much content. So my social media agency that supports me and my digital graphic designer is like, Tamra, can you stop? Can you take a pause? But I don't, honestly, that's a struggle that I have, to be honest, Rachel, because I really want to highlight the incredible people that I have on my shows, as well as the investment that goes into one particular episode that I might be sharing. And there's not enough platform. I should be posting 10 times a day, but that's a whole nother investment that I have not yet taken the leap of faith in.
Yeah. What's one of the most impactful conversations you've had on your podcast?
Oh my gracious.
Oh, we
man.
have about the same number of episodes at this point. We have like 450.
You know, I love the messy comeback story. I love the people who are willing to take me to that place of demise and tell me how they got out of it, because I think there's a lot of people in that dark hole, the dark nights of the soul space. And so to just be able to go there with people, because you can see their emotion, you can see their traumas when you're talking to them. Literally, they don't even have to be emotionally charged anymore, but you can just see it in their body, the way that they talk about it, whether it's shame, whether it's regret, whether it's fear, whether it's control. And I just feel honored to be able to open that can of worms, that Pandora's closet, so that other people can have transformation on the other side.
Amazing. Okay, so we have 3 podcasts. What does your schedule look like to get content for that, plus 2 kids and being a wife and all of the things?
So I do 2 double podcast recordings for the Fit and Faith show on Mondays. And then I have a 6 a.m. recording on Tuesday mornings. That's my solo episodes, because I am on a bike, a stationary bike, while I record. And it is an inspiration and hopefully an activation for people to move and listen, rather than to just listen, because it's just awkward to listen to somebody huffing and puffing and you're just sitting there having your cup of coffee. So that really takes the trajectory of me having a ton of batch content, so that I can take summers off with my kids and holiday seasons off with my kids. And I don't have to record during that time, other than my personal recording, which is also a part of me working out. So it's more habitual and routine than it is. And then the other 2 happen during the work week, during the time that the kiddos are at school. And so lunchtime, usually, sometimes we're eating, sometimes we're not. And that's really when all of the people who are on those shows, because it's not just me on those shows, we can gather from around the country at a time that works best for everyone.
What advice would you give to someone who's wanting to grow their podcast, or maybe they've had a podcast for a while, but their downloads are kind of stuck?
You know, I think people need to have more fun. I think editing gets in the way of people. I think the tech gets in the way of people, and they have a message that's meant to be shared. And if they could just get out behind their perfectionism and their fear of what people would think if their dog is barking in the background, or what people would think if their kid comes in and interrupts the conversation, and they have to do this whole process of, oh, that show is over. And it's like, no, like people want to be with people, real people. And so I love when I yawn. I love when I cough or sneeze or don't really know the word that I'm trying to pull out of myself in that moment. I get tongue tied. And same with my guests. And I just allow them to say, hey guys, like we're just allowing people to be a fly on the wall of a really intimate conversation. And it's not about perfection. It's about obedience. It's about discipline. And when people see that you show up consistently, because that's the biggest problem podcasters have is consistency, the know, like, and trust that we're supposed to be building in the social arena happens organically. You don't have to have effort in it. They just say, wow, she did it again. Okay, she did it again. She really means what it is that she says, because she says what she's going to do and she does what she's going to say, you know?
Yeah. I love the just doing it messy and doing it
Mhm.
imperfect.
Mhm.
We had, I think, Dean Graziosi on the show at one point,
Love him.
and his dogs were barking, and he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you can just edit that out." And I was like, "No, I don't care.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
I've
I
got
love that
dogs."
you have dogs and you're at home, and it's real.
Yeah, like I think people over edit, and
Yeah.
it's not human connection anymore, and they just really
No.
miss that, you know?
I completely agree. I think sometimes people are trying to jump to like the goods, right? Like they're like, oh, this like warm up part of the conversation. And my interviews are pretty long. They're like 45 minutes to 50 minutes. And there is like a warm up. And that's why when I come to shows that are shorter and I'm like, okay, what's the deepest thing you want to talk about first? I just want to go out the gate with that. But also know that like that transparency and vulnerability is not something that is easily accessible for everyone. And so there has to be grace in those conversations.
Yeah. How do you integrate your faith into your business?
Oh my gosh. So I didn't for a really long time. That's that explosion that I talked about.
Uh-huh.
And I realized that if it's not the foundation, then it will fail. And, people have lots of different thought patterns on what failure is. And yes, it was the most amazing, hardest learning lesson of my life. And I'm grateful I walked through it and still am walking through it. I get it wrong every day, but I know that if my faith is what fuels my fire, it's never going to run out. And I get to ignite other people in the process. You get complacent when it's your idea. You get tired, you get bored. A lot of things happen when you don't have faith infused to what your calling is supposed to be, your purpose is, and people can feel that. And so I think your energy is what your faith is in some sense of the word. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know Jesus, or I'm not a Christian, or any of the things that you might not be, and you're stamping yourself as such, I still think you have faith in something. You have faith, you have hope in something, or you wouldn't be breathing right now, right? Because the alternative is to not be here. And sometimes that feels easier, which is why we have the mental health crisis that we do.
Hmm. What advice would you give someone who wants to bring their faith into their business?
Do it scared. It's just like we said, do it imperfectly. Like faith and fear will always coexist. It's not an opposite and or option. I always have an element of fear that goes out with me sharing something bold, because it could be stepped on, spit on, it could be silenced, it could be canceled, but at the end of the day, it's really not about me. It's about the transformation that we get to provide based on our yes. And so people can poke fun, people can throw slander, but I just believe that if people can do it fearfully, fear is all the alternative word of that when you're in your faith is awestruck reverence. So if you have fear, you have awestruck reverence. And so to me, when I see people doing things messy, when I see them showing up boldly and saying the thing that nobody else is saying and saying it even with fear, I'm in awestruck reverence to what it is that they're capable of doing. And we have that power within ourselves. And so to tap into that, I think is beautiful.
Yeah. I think also just remembering that you're not going to make everyone happy.
Yeah, you're not for everyone. Everyone's not going to follow you. I actually do like an unfollow campaign, and I always am like, unfollow me. Like, don't follow me, because if you're following me, I will fail you. And we
Yeah.
see this in like the American church all the time. People are like, oh, I'm running away from the faith because this person did this thing. And I'm like, yeah, but they're human. And so if I just encourage people and tell them I'm human, every day I get it wrong, then I am not on a pedestal. And for a really long time, Rachel, that was what was the problem in my life, was I had been put on a pedestal by so many people that I didn't know how to get down from that pedestal. And the Barbie and Ken, literally people called me and my husband, that lifestyle that we created, I felt plastic. I felt stuck. I felt like I didn't have an opportunity to be imperfect. And so I really encourage people, that's like the best place to be, is to say, I don't get it right and I'm imperfect, and people will give you grace. There's so much more humanity connection when we just see each other in the empathy, through the empathetic eyes, through compassion, to say, I know today was a hard day. I know today you don't feel like smiling. I know you're in the middle of a really muddy situation and you're still showing up. Wow, kudos to you, you know?
Yeah. I think it's really dangerous when people start putting people on pedestals and
Yeah.
then you see them fall
Mhm.
because everyone is human and
Yep.
everyone makes mistakes. And then
Yep.
like their whole world is crushed because
Yeah.
they like maybe they saw like Jesus or the church through that person.
Yeah.
And then when that person fails, like their whole faith comes crumbling.
That's totally it. And then there's this language being utilized. It's like church hurt, or
Mhm.
the spirit of offense, right? And people are just living offended and
Sure.
they can't get past themselves. And that's why forgiveness is so beautiful. And even in the podcasting world, like I forgive so easily because I have an ability to forgive myself. And so I think when we're speaking, if we're not speaking out of a place of forgiveness, then these buzzwords of authenticity and vulnerability are actually facades. And
Mhm.
that's when we then get stuck in this masked arena of who we are supposed to be versus who we actually are.
Yeah. One of the things that I did was I just unfollowed everybody.
Yes. That's
And I
so
was
good.
like, I don't want to hear what they're saying or their message. Or so I literally
That's
follow like
powerful.
40 something people on Instagram.
That is so smart, Rachel. I talk about a curated feed all the time, but I have not officially unfollowed everyone. But, you know, I don't scroll for
Yeah,
that reason, because it's the same thing. I'm like, I don't really want to know what they're saying, because it muddies my mind. And
exactly.
everyone is like, the biggest problem I see on what show do I start? What's my message? What business should I start? What book should I write? Is everyone is writing everybody else's story. And if you just stop that jargon and you get into who you are and the life that you've led and the wisdom that you bring to the table, man, there's so much more power in that. There's so much more joy in that. There's so much more clarity, because the problem is lack of clarity, because you're literally in a knowledge cycle of consumerism of other people's words. And
Hmm.
so you're listening to a podcast, keep listening to Rachel's podcast. We love you listening to these words, but I really want people to think about that. Like, are you stuck in a knowledge cycle and therefore you're not activating? Rachel
Yeah,
had to stop all of that jargon in order for her to say, you know what? This is my purpose. This is my message. And this is why I press play. And I don't need to regurgitate what everybody else is saying. I have something to say myself.
yeah. So good. What advice would you give to yourself 10 years ago?
Ah, gosh, what would that have been? 27. That was before oh man, slow down, slow
Mhm.
down. It would literally be enjoy the ride, rest more. And yeah, you don't have to go so hard. It's
Yeah,
already like your path is already paved for you. And the universe, if you want to call it that, it's already been constructed to your favor. I mean, it makes me think of a Katniss from Hunger Games. You know, like it's in your favor. It's already in your favor, right? And so when we think about it that way, how much more free do we get to live when we feel like instead we are trying to go after something that truly is not possible? Possibility is endless. And so it's just a matter of slowing down to see that possibility.
yeah. What has God been teaching you lately?
Man. In the last year, the biggest lessons I've learned has been around honor, and learning how to honor myself in the season that I'm in, honoring my children in the season that they're in, honoring partnerships that didn't work out, honoring employees that are not showing up in my expectations, because my expectations are false realities to their life. And so just the word honor has been something that God has continually just honor and humility go together. And so when you're on stage all the time, when you're on microphones all the time, when you see your name in lights, I always remember that I wasn't the one who got me there. And when I can honor other people in that process, man, it makes it so much more fun because then you have a community and a family alongside you.
Yeah. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
Oh, impact is generational. Impact is something that I might not ever see with my own eyes. And if I can make a transformation to one, you hear about this of like 99 for the one, leave the 99 sheep to go after the one that is stuck in the mess and the mire. And that's been true for me. I needed to be that one for someone, and they showed up for me, transformed my life, and she'll never know the amount of people that I've impacted. So it's like being the Abraham to somebody who will eventually be the Joseph or the Joshua. It's going to take them into the promised land. I'm not going to meet the people that I have the ultimate impact on, but I know I'm breaking generational chains by showing up every single day. And I think that's what it is just break the cycles of habitual trauma that have happened. That's impact that is far beyond your ability, but you get to have your name connected to it. That's standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite scripture that's like your foundation?
Yes. Well, it's the first one I've ever memorized, which is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understandings. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Literally everything that I just said was premised on that. I'm utilizing a really cool service called Dwell right now with my daughter. And it's an app, but it's also like a monthly mailer of tattoos that help you memorize scripture. And it's been such a fun thing. Like my daughter is not a photographic memory, but it might as well be. She can memorize things amazingly. So in the last couple of months, we've been memorizing scripture nonstop. And now I have an image connected to that scripture, which makes it that much more profound.
Okay. I have the Dwell app, but I didn't know they actually had that service. So that's
Yes,
cool.
it's so cool. I love it so much.
All right. What's one of the best books you've read?
Oh, you know what? I love Audible, and Rich Dad Poor Dad was epic. And because I listened to it with my son when he was 7, and that was a fun co-read and co-creation with him, and really letting me see life through a lens that I didn't have when I was that age. So he now looks to everything as an investment. He looks to property, he looks to real estate, he talks to people, and he wants to know how much money they make, and he wants to make it easier for them. And I just love that we've ignited his entrepreneurial spirit so young. And then the other one that was really pivotal for me was when I was a stay-at-home mom in that season where I was just in a space of despair and trying to find light again. I had my first overnight solo retreat, which I highly recommend anybody do. This is about a year and a half before my podcast started, and it's called Present Over Perfect. And I felt like I wrote that book. Have you ever read a book where you're just like, oh, they literally read or lived my exact life? And that's how that felt. And it gave me permission. And I think when you read a book that gives you permission to become more of who you're meant to be, there is no better gift that author could give. That's impact. Because I've never had a conversation with Shauna. I probably will never meet her. But maybe I should have her on my podcast just after this conversation. Yeah. Now that you said that, I'm like, wait, that's so silly. I should totally meet her, and I should totally tell her. And that's the cool thing about a podcast is you have access to people that you otherwise wouldn't.
Yep. So cool. Yeah. When my son was 7, we were teaching him the difference between asset and liability.
Yes. You get it. Oh my gosh.
I get it. I'm like, he still needs reinforcement because he's trying to get us to get a Tesla. And I'm like, is this an asset or liability, dude? Like, come on. He was like, but I want a Tesla. I'm like, all right, start saving up your money and then you can get a Tesla. Like,
well, I guess it would depend. It's an asset to our family because we do have a Tesla, because my husband drives like 100 miles a day, and we travel so much that it is amazing. There's no gas mileage and there's no maintenance on the car. So it's besides, we do pop tires a lot. That's like the main thing all the time. But he's a contractor in the contracting space. So I think he just runs over nails. But regardless, Tesla, I'm pro Tesla to your son.
I'll tell him you said that. But like we don't drive at all, like hardly ever.
Sure.
So, like it doesn't make any sense for us.
Yeah, I get it. They're fun.
And then when you have kids, they just like make it
destroy
a
it
mess.
all.
I'm like, it'll look so nice for like a day, and then you bring in your snacks and your baseball stuff, and then I'm like, it's over.
Then I don't want the Tesla. I need more space.
Yes,
totally get it. It's hysterical.
Where can we connect with you?
I hang out on Instagram most, so hopefully people will come meander over there. I love to be in the DM. So if you want something, I'm a voice memo kind of person. So voice memo me. I'd love to listen and connect. And I've got a resource hub, an app called Fit and Faith Network. So you guys can jump on the app world if you're into that. And then all the podcasts I mentioned, Fit and Faith, Girls Gone Holy, and the Founder Collective.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It was such a gift. Thank you so much. It was like rapid fire. Go, go, go.